right, guys, we are now live for another Thursday night conversations with Commodores. And I'm so pleased to have Ian Gaines as my guest tonight. Ian, I know we've been chatting for a minute or two, before we went live, but I hope you're doing well and I appreciate you making some time tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's nice to sit with you and talk a little bit. So yeah.
It is. It is. Well, it's leading up to tonight's show. We've seen a lot of great comments from former teammates of yours. So I know we're going to have some folks rolling in here over the next 30, 40 minutes or so. But before we dive and go way back to your Denton roots, talk to me a little bit, share with us a little bit about what are you doing these days? Where do you live? Share about your family, whatever you want to tell us.
All right, so I'm back near home. I'm in Prosper, Texas, which is about 30 minutes from little old Denton. And I am a sport bike freestyle performer. So I ride sport bikes the wrong way, I guess, for entertainment. We do wheelies and stoppies and drifts and burnouts and anything you're not supposed to on a bike. We do that for venues at high risk for entertainment. So I travel the world and I travel the country performing. When it's not COVID, I'm on the road about 40 weekends out of the year. Yeah, so during COVID, I've gotten used to being at home a little more here lately. So, but it's been good, man. It's been great to be home a little bit and get to see the kiddos and hang out and do normal stuff. But yeah, that's my job, man. I run around the world and ride motorcycles and try not to get hurt, which doesn't always work out that way. But yeah.
Oh, we'll get into that in a few minutes. But I'm sure for someone who is creative, someone who is used to being in front of crowds and testing your athletic skills, this has probably been a pretty good test for you the last few months. I don't know how much you're performing these days, but just being home and, the whole world stopping for the last several months. So how has that been on you? And are you getting a little used to it, or what's going on there with you?
I mean, I've never really sat still, man. Like even as a kid, I was always involved in things. And so it's really tough. I've been trying to wrap my head around that I'm home, the trailer and the van aren't moving. And we've done one show since it's been closed down. I have another coming up, so that's great. People are getting used to people being around people, but yeah, man, it's been tough. It's been tough. It feels like isolation, even though we're with our families. And I'm really extroverted, so I don't get to have those conversations with people and meet those one-off conversations and single serving friends throughout the year. So it's kind of weird.
Well, I know you're a guy who likes to stay fit, and you have to for the job that you do. What kind of workout regimen have you created for yourself, or have you just? And here's a term I heard from one of my buddies. He hasn't worked out during the pandemic. He's gained the COVID-19, is what he calls it.
Oh man, yeah, no, I still stay fit. Thankfully, the gym that I'm a member for and I actually help out with some marketing stuff. They're open. They've been allowed to be open, and they're following all the guidelines and have had nothing really happen there. So it's been great. So I'm still able to go. But before that, I was at home trying to figure it out, man, with every band, ball, and stairway I could get it done, just to try to stay fit. And it helps my mind to be that active anyway. I really get a lot out of that physical activity. So the beginning of it, I was going stir crazy, but now the doors are open, so I'm able to go to the gym. So
well, that's good. We're now 7 months into this, and
insane.
And hopefully sometime in the upcoming months, they'll find the vaccine that we also desperately need and get back to some normalcy. And we'll come back to that in a few minutes, but you're out of Denton, Texas. And how does a multi-talented athlete find his way to Vanderbilt? What's your story about coming out of high school?
It's a crazy story, man. Honestly, like I don't know if people even know that I played with. My mom knows it because it was nuts. Like I got recruited by a lot of schools, and I'm in Big 12 country, man. So I was recruited by a lot of the schools here, Texas A&M, all those guys. And I didn't want to stay near here. I wanted to go somewhere else. I always wanted to explore. So schools like Vanderbilt were interesting. Now, and my mom put me on a routine that when I received a letter of interest from any school, that I'd write them a thank you note back saying, thank you so much for considering me. And then I'm looking at your school as well. So I sent mine back to Vanderbilt. And probably about a week later, once it landed there and got opened, Coach Zimmer called me and told me that he had no clue who I was. He had no clue that they were recruiting me, and that he thanked me for my letter, but I wasn't on their list, on their boards, and he looked me up. And so I hung up I was the man around town. All of us who got to go play ball at that level, we were the guys, So I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, So I got a little offended, said something my mom didn't want me to hear, that I didn't want to hear. And probably about 2 hours later, Coach Woody calls me and apologizes for Coach Zimmer's mistake that I was on the board, and that he apologized for the fact that they overlooked me. And I almost didn't go to Vanderbilt even then, because I felt like, man, if for me then, like, if A&M's recruited me and then Vanderbilt's not knowing that I'm on their boards, why would I go there? But fate has its way of getting you where you need to be. And it worked out perfectly. So yeah,
it does. By that point, I dare say, A&M is still, they're not in the conference. They're still very much locking horns, bad term. The Aggies and the Horns are still going at it. And that's still that conference, while it had disbanded by then, I think it's still, those rivalries were still there. And I suspect, you correct me if I'm wrong, an athlete coming out of Denton, Texas is expected to stay in state. And at the bare minimum, you can go to Oklahoma, Arkansas, or one of the nearby states, but still get frowned upon. But Vanderbilt, that's SEC. That's a whole nother league.
Oh, it was crazy, man. And I mean, for me, OU was my last, like, I'm not coming there. Sorry, guys. And that was tough for a lot of people in my area. My coach, especially, since he was an OU, he's an OU fan, and quite a few coaches in my high school were OU graduates. But, I made my decision based upon post-football things. And then also my thirst to be able for knowledge and be able to learn and be able to talk to people who necessarily weren't football heads. It was nice to get to do that. Texas is a football state. So that's all we got. Heavy dose,
Certainly. Well, growing up, I'm going to assume you had multiple sports that kept your attention. So share with us a little bit about, besides football, what else did you get into that didn't get you in trouble?
I mean, I rode motorcycles clearly as a kid, just kind of had bike always. And then I played baseball, was shortstop in baseball, shortstop center field in baseball. Played basketball, wasn't really my thing, a little bit too much finesse for me. My brothers are all basketball players, but it wasn't really down my lane. But then by the time I got to high school, as a freshman, I was really competitive as a freshman. Got to play some games up a level and up another level as a freshman, kind of tested me out toward the end of the season. And then when we got to off season, my high school coach was pretty much like, look, I need you to make a decision on what you want to do. And I'm like, I'm 14. Like, how am I going to make a decision? Like, I like to say, you need to decide if you're going to play football here and be successful, or you're going to play other sports and kind of be a jack of all trades, master of none. And so at that moment, being a kid who was obsessed with football since I was about 3, I cut everything loose and dedicated 100% of my athletic ability to football. And it paid off. I was able to maintain my weight. I was able to train really hard in the off season and get a heavy dose of football every year. That it was good for me. It was good for my body, all those things. So,
well, from a bike standpoint, how are the coaches dealing with you doing competitive biking, or were you at that point? Had you elevated your abilities to compete or to perform?
For me, I just had a motorcycle, and they knew I did. In Texas, you can get a motorcycle license at 15. So being a kid on varsity with no driver's license, I had to find a way to get there. So I had a motorcycle, and that's the way I went back and forth to school and back and forth to practice. And so my coaches never liked the motorcycle thing, especially since as my first year on varsity, I was a starter. So they really didn't like that very much. All coaches have always hated the motorcycle thing, and understandably. But it was just part of me, man. I enjoyed riding bikes, and I enjoyed that lifestyle and that atmosphere. And I continue to do it, even though everyone frowned upon it. But that's me.
You're going to laugh at this. Growing up in South Alabama in the mid 80s,
oh man,
one of our catchers, I was a baseball player as well. One of our catchers rode a motorcycle. He too didn't have a car. That was his method of getting around. And he was a total badass. He smoked cigarettes. He had a big mustache. Nobody messed with him. Nobody tried to steal on him. But at least where I grew up in my hometown, the guys who rode the motorcycles, that was the tough crowd. You didn't mess with them. They parked in a specific area near the smoking section. We actually had a smoking section in our school. And when those guys came in, you parted the ways. You gave them their space. Now, growing up in Denton, Texas in the 90s, I'm sure it's a whole different situation. And it's just funny to me, my experience in high school with motorcycles.
Yeah, I was the only motorcycle in the parking lot. It was just me, that was it. Like, there's no one else, and no one else's parents let them have a motorcycle and ride to school.
Well,
But yeah.
when did you start being competitive with cycles?
I mean, so I rode bikes, and so when I was in Nashville,
Mhm.
I lived out in Murfreesboro for a year or two and I met a couple guys that were stunt riders, do what I do now. I'm still friends with them now, and they're still out there. But I saw what they were doing. I was super interested in it, and I like it's a different way to ride a bike, and it looked like it took a lot of skill and practice and dedication with things that I was familiar with. So I just tried it out. The bike that I had, I tried it out, and I destroyed it and destroyed myself. And about 5 or 6 bikes later, I figured it out. And then I got into it as a hobbyist for a little while, and then it became. I realized it was expensive, so I tried to bridge the gap to say, how can I get sponsors enough to at least make it, even out and break even. And then it became a career out of nowhere. It turned into a career. So
Wow.
yeah.
Well, I guess I got so many areas to go, but let's
No.
talk. You're in high school, and Vanderbilt is now on your radar. Coach Woody has saved the
Yeah.
recruitment.
Coach Zimmer, man. Yeah.
What was it that convinced you to come up to Nashville to check out the school, and then what convinced you this was going to be home for the next 4 or 5 years?
Honestly, I decided I was going to take any visit of a school that would ask me to come out. I didn't know. I was a kid. I was open to play ball anywhere, go to school anywhere. I almost decided to go to Berkeley and Boston and do music and not even play football anymore. So that was also an option. So my very first visit of all my visits was to Nashville, and what sold me on it, honestly, was the Alabama game, that game, and it was the fanfare, of course, as a football player, but it was the campus, it was the people, something about the vibe. I went other places, and everywhere else felt like I was at college. I was at a college campus, and they were doing college things, and somehow Vanderbilt had a different type of feeling. It was a different culture. It felt a little more close knit, even though I visited other smaller schools, in population. And I just decided it was great. It was Music City. I was into music. It all made sense. And I just thought it'd be a good spot for me to land. So I decided. I committed super early. It broke a little bit of the pressure because it was getting a little crazy recruiting.
Oh yeah.
And I was happy with my decision when I made it, for sure.
Well, I tell you, I've always loved the slogan. I don't know if Coach Mason came up with it or whoever. It's and I'm going to mess up the slogan, but it's talking about the school, the conference, and the town, and they're selling Nashville as part of the experience, and that's so very true. But the other thing that you mentioned about the Berkeley School of Music, and for those of you who don't know, in Boston, it's one of the preeminent undergraduate music schools in the country. How many schools can say that their athletes are also interested in the School of Music as a different option than playing football? And I just think that's what makes the Vanderbilt recruit, the Vanderbilt signee, the Vanderbilt player so unique compared to other, the football factories. But did you bring your motorcycle from Denton or get a new motorcycle when you got to Nashville?
My mom and I brought everything I owned up from Denton, and my bike was one of the things that came with me. And I rode it, and I parked it outside I was in Branscombe at the time, so I was nervous about it being stolen. So I would park it outside of McGugan, just outside the Henderson doors, like where you would come out. I parked it right there, and get an eyeball on it every morning for morning workouts and check it out. So it was there. My mom and I came. I parked it inside the hotel. I'm a little town kid from Denton. I'm like, I don't want my bike getting stolen. But yeah, it came with me. I rode it there. I rode it around the campus a little bit, and then it was. Coach Woody never liked it. Coach Maskell never liked it. No.
Oh, of course not. But I gotta ask, what kind of tone did that set with you and your new teammates, your buddies? You're the guy with the motorcycle. Who does he think he is? What is that?
Man, yeah. I think I was probably the different kid in my class, probably. Like I was a guy with these dreadlocks and had all these other hobbies, and I'm riding a motorcycle, and I look back in hindsight, I think it made the coaches like, is this guy even interested in football? Like he's doing everything else.
Yeah,
but
they didn't know the guys probably didn't know what to do with you.
I was a strange cat, man, no doubt. Yeah.
I wouldn't now. Don't put that on yourself. Not sure. You just didn't fit the mold of the jock football player. Not that the other guys necessarily were, but you just had multi dimensions to yourself, and you probably always have.
Yeah, it's been that way for a long time. Yeah, long as I can remember, for sure.
Yeah. So Mama gets you to write that letter. That letter sets a tone at Vanderbilt. Coach Woody saves it. You come up there, you fall in love with the school. when do you report to campus for the first time as an incoming freshman?
As soon as the day after I graduated high school, we drove up to Nashville for summer workouts. That's who I was.
You were done. You were done with Denton. You were ready to go.
I was always into the next step kind of guy, and I was super serious about training. And once I knew where I was going, that was my mind frame. And once I was done with Denton, I walked across the stage, and my mom wanted to throw a big graduation party, and I just said I can't because we have to get up and drive to Nashville 12 hours the next day. So we had a small little gathering. Yeah, we're out. And so I did that, man, and I was serious about it because I had goals since a tiny kid. Like I was a kid that sold the NFL logo on my PB jersey. Like I literally stitched it on my PB jersey. You know,
awesome.
Those are dreams of mine that I had. So
awesome.
I wanted to go. Yeah.
Something tells me your mother may still have that jersey. Does she?
I have it, and my son wore it the other day.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, so we still have it. Yeah.
Well, I thought that I left for Nashville 3 weeks after I graduated high school, and I'm thinking, man, I'm getting up here. Well, my dad and mom decided, why don't you take a summer school class? Just get used to Vanderbilt. It'll take a little bit of pressure because, you know, you got to be there in August when the freshman class reports. You can start your workouts, get to know some of the guys, and just get the but you leaving the day after, man, you were ready. You were definitely
ready to go, man. You're talking football, man. I was excited. Yeah.
Well, did you have a roommate your freshman year?
Yes, I had Luke Hammond was my room. Well, part of the year because Luke took a trip, man. That was a crazy freshman year. He fell the elevator that year. That's the year he fell from the elevator in Towers. The day before school started. And so there was no Luke for the first semester. You know, obviously he was recovering and but you know, you can't break Luke, man. He's a Timex watch, man. Nothing you can do with that guy.
Did you guys live in Branscombe your freshman year? Or
we were in Vaughn. Yeah, we're Vaughn 3, man, Branscombe. It was me, Luke Hammond, Tim Meyer, who left, Justin Geis, Nick Lyle, and Pat Brunner. Yeah, we were doing damage for sure.
Well, speaking of damage, let me throw some of these names out to you. We got a bunch of folks signed on. We got Kenny Cole, who's in the Huntsville area. We got OJ Fleming. Yeah. Kenneth Christian has signed on. Let's see, Steve McCoy, Ed Zaborski, Ken Hammond, and Everett Robinson. So thank you guys who've signed on so far. Of course, I'm talking with Ian Gaines in Texas, and we're at freshman year. And I know that Texas is known for its high school football, probably, maybe you could argue California, but Texas, probably the top 2 states putting out kids every year. It's a high brand of football. And I want you to take it from being a small fish a big fish in a small pond in Denton. But now you're Division I, you're in SEC, it's the best conference. You're fighting for playing time because you're a freshman. What was that? And I ask this of everybody. Right. What was that moment where it clicked in your head? Man, I'm in the big time. This is college football. This is some serious. Everybody else is good too.
Yeah, I mean, it was a moment that I got to campus and talked to the other running backs I recruited. And so, you know, I left my school with touchdown records and yards, you know, yardage records and yards per carry records and all those things. And when I got there, the other 3 guys in the class were identical when it came to numbers. So I realized they were great too. And then I realized it was a big time, probably a little too late because it was kickoff in Tuscaloosa, and I'm on the kickoff team, realizing that wow, I'm actually down here. I'm no longer playing Wichita Falls. I'm no longer playing, you know, Denton Ryan. I'm in Alabama. Like the Roll Tide was resonating through my chest. That's when I knew that I was playing big time football, and it did really quickly in the first 2 minutes.
We didn't know each other until tonight, but I was in those stands because I've seen all the Vanderbilt games in the state of Alabama going back since once I was in high school. And if that was your first college experience of being on the field and playing, that's a pretty intimidating place to at least start your career. So I hope that after that first play, some of those butterflies or big eyes kind of faded a little bit and you knew it was time to get down to business.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, it was just crazy. I was hoping.
Go ahead. You hit mute, but go ahead.
So I was mom calling. I tried to turn it. everybody, hope I'll get a chance to redshirt like everyone else, you know, but I didn't. I was left out there on the field alone, you know, with the Crimson Tide, but it was great.
And your freshman year, how many games did you get to play in?
I played in, I mean, for me, I did special teams that whole year. I didn't do anything offensively or defensively. I played special teams in the whole year, and most every game I lettered that year, so I was able to play. So yeah, I was out there running around trying to make things happen and trying to get some time. And I was always a weird player, just like they didn't know what to do with me on a motorcycle with dreadlocks and snakes and et cetera and guitars. The same thing happened on the field where they didn't know where to place me. It was always a different idea every week almost. So yeah, it was crazy.
Well, as we went in from July to August, September, you're now into October. You're in the middle of your freshman first semester, and that's when things are starting to pile up from a standpoint of responsibilities.
Right.
You're not at home. You probably hadn't done laundry in a long, long time. You got to eat right.
Right.
Do you remember, because it happens to everybody, do you remember being part of that freshman first semester where it just seemed like, not that it was overwhelming, but it was just starting to pile up on all the things coming at you, in addition to playing Division I football?
Yeah, I owned a facility a couple of years ago, well, for quite a few years, and I shut it down, where I trained athletes like from 9 years old to the NFL, and it was great. But I always told them about that, how playing football at Vanderbilt, not only was I out there playing against the national champions every week, but I was also in the class with some kids splitting atoms next to me. Yeah. And so that was hard because I had to compete in the classroom, and then I had to clear my mind to go compete, in the film room and on the practice field. So about then it became to get a little heavy. Plus I took 19 hours thinking I was going to redshirt. Wow. And so I had that on top of leaving campus, Friday, while my friends are playing video games in the hallway. So yeah, it was tough. October, you're dead on, man. It was like, wow, I'm here. I'm kind of an adult, I can't really bail out of this thing. I'm here, and I gotta anchor down and do something, like, for lack of a better term. Yeah, I gotta anchor down right now.
I can remember that time for myself thinking, this time last year, I'm QB1 and we're kicking butt, and man, life is great. I signed up for this and I got 3 more years after it.
Am I gonna make it?
Yeah. Many, I'm way pre cell phone days for me. And my instructions were, you can call home on Sunday afternoons after a certain time. It's cheaper. And man, those days just were long for me. But then you get your footing. You get a little bit, you gain a little confidence. Maybe you get a good grade on something. Maybe you're recognized for some of your special team play, whatever it is. But you just seem to start getting a little bit. So by the time you're hitting Thanksgiving and it's UT, it's Tennessee week.
Yeah.
Hopefully you've gained some footing there. Was that part of your experience, or were you still kind of treading water a little bit?
I gained some footing, one, because like that game, we missed Thanksgiving, right? And so I was always a guy that was completely down with like those type of sacrifices. Like, what do you Thanksgiving is like not a problem. Like, we're gonna play ball. Like, who wants to eat turkey anyway? And so I kind of got amped up for that. I was excited, and that's like the last game of the season. I know I'm gonna go into my sophomore year, and I was uninjured. So yeah, around that time, it started feeling like I play football here. This is my school. I play football here. I'm part of this team, part of this family. Going to my sophomore year, I had huge expectations for myself and my teammates. We all looked good. My class, we were a really big class physically. Mm-hmm. And so I was excited for what the future looked like. It was looking great. So yeah, I was stoked.
Did you play for Woody a second year, or had Coach Johnson then come on?
So I played for Woody the second year, sophomore year. I played for Woody. And I got moved to D-back that second year during camp, I think. So that was new for me. Everyone wanted me to be a defensive back anyway, and I fought it even as a little kid. So I went over reluctantly with, honestly, to be honest, with a couple of tears, like, you're taking away what I love to do, and did that with Coach Dino Felino. He was my D-backs coach. But I took one for the team. I wanted to play on this football team, so I went over there and did that sophomore year. Yeah. So.
It's and you're going to shake your head, but to me, those guys who are asked to move positions for the greater good of the team, those are the glue of the team. That's the unsung heroes that no one talks about outside of the team. The coaches recognize it. And yeah, it's a struggle because you've grown up your whole life playing X position and certain expectations of yourself and the team. And then it's almost as if the rug is pulled out from under you.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was my experience. And honestly, at that point, it got a little numb for me. Like I was going to practice, I was participating, I was 100% a Commodore regardless. But it was like, man, like I'm out here in deep water where I'm, really not familiar with. So
was that the spring of your freshman year or not until the summer going into sophomore?
Not until the summer going in sophomore year. And I still thought I was a running back, going into camp. And then they got the idea that it'd be great for me to go over there. So I went, and I did my very best I could do over there with guys who were born to be D-backs, and I was used to going forward, not backwards, but yeah.
Now, were you part of the classes that went out to bell buckle preseason, or had that concluded?
No, yeah, that was done. That wasn't.
Okay, because I was going to ask you. I know I have to ask you about the reptiles in the dorm room.
Okay, yeah.
All right, so you gotta, let's backtrack a little bit. Talk to us about who and what, and tell us a little bit about that.
I mean, I always had reptiles. So growing up, I had iguanas. I had a big 6-foot iguana named Emmett, who was my favorite. Emmett Smith's my favorite football player. So in high school, I had a big 6-foot guy named Emmett, and I always had reptiles. I always had pets. And so when I got to Vanderbilt, and they had all those rules about animals, I was like, well, I get it. It's a suggestion, but snakes don't make any noise. They don't bark. So I just had a small ball python, and then I got a second one my freshman year. But one of them got loose before he moved out.
What dorm? Where was this?
I was Vaughn 3, man, and I remember Brock. I forgot his last name. Brock. I forgot his last name. He was the our academic athletic advisor or whatever, and he talked to us about how always told the story about how there was a snake found in the toilet in one of the dorms. Don't have reptiles; they'll find out. And I was like, yeah. And so it'd be known, my snake got out before we moved out. I could not find her, and she ended up being on top of the toilet in a room, not in the toilet, but on the back of a toilet in a room when they found her. So that really happened.
Well, you may not remember Brock's name, but I can assure you he remembers yours.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm glad he's not signed on because no one ever found out till now that it was me. But
Ian, it's out. Ian, how did the roommates deal with it?
I mean, Luke was cool, man. I mean, Luke's one of those guys, like he has such a rhythm, like we both were cool with one another from totally different backgrounds. So he's a solid guy. He was cool with it. I was cool with Luke. He was cool with me. So he was fine. Now, everyone else, he probably thought it was weird. He probably never told me because we were such good friends. He probably never said, look, man, like these snakes, man, these animals, but he was cool. And he was gone for half the year. So I don't know what he's complaining about, but it was, and then my roommate, Robert Dinwiddie, he definitely hated all of it, but that's okay. Yeah.
Guys, I want to welcome, let's see, Michael Adam has signed on.
Mike, what's up?
And Big Derek May has signed on with us.
Yeah, D May.
So thank you, guys. Obviously, I'm talking with Ian Gaines and his love of reptiles, and his roommates not so much love of reptiles.
Not so stoked, yeah.
Well, how were you able, it's almost absurd for me to say, if you're carrying 19 hours your freshman year, you're playing, you're contributing, you're getting used to campus life. You've got a motorcycle that maybe sometimes you want to get out and just ride and clear your head.
Right.
And you got to tend to pets. You're almost an adult, man. When did you find time, if at all, for music?
Music for me, man, it's always in there. So as long as I have an instrument, I can sit down and crank it. But I had time to go. I played a lot with Michael Adams. We sat down and jammed out. We were both pecking away at guitars back then. So I just found anytime I could sit down somewhere. For me, I didn't drink as a college student or as an adult now. So for frat parties were a perfect time for me to pluck on my guitar and play. So I may be the guy in the corner playing for about 15, 20 minutes to get it out. But yeah, I always found time for music. It was important to me. It was therapeutic even. So.
Were you able to take any classes at Owen or through any of the other programs on campus?
Yeah, I mean, to put it out there, part of my recruiting process was that I was allowed to go to Blair, And,
I didn't mean Owen.
Blair. That I was going to be allowed to go to Blair and pursue my because every other school told me that I couldn't. And by the time I got there, it was evident that I wasn't gonna be able to do that because I did all my auditions to get into the school for my juries, and of course I couldn't do my juries because juries lined up perfectly with practice.
Mhm.
And so I was told then, hey, here's this major, you're going to do this. It's called HOD. So your friends are in the class. Here's the classes. So I ended up being an HOD major, not knowing what it was, hadn't researched it yet because I was going to do music. So I took some small classes, some songwriting classes. I took some things over there when I could during the spring and during the off season, but wasn't as much as I wanted. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm glad you're able to at least get your outlet in other ways from a music standpoint. It sounds like it's always been part of your life. It may still be part of your life in some regard. Well, let's kind of pivot or move into sophomore, junior years. You're in the middle of college. During the summer times, did you come home? Did you go somewhere else? What did you do each summer
Each,
between
each,
sessions?
each summer, I usually came home for like those first couple of weeks when campus is pretty much shut down. And then
Mhm.
I make my way back for summer workouts. It's how I lived in high school. Me and my friends. I mean, I got in trouble in high school a couple of years because me and my quarterback would break into the weight room to train, and eventually the coach gave us a key. So I wanted to be with the team. I wanted to train with the team. I wanted to enhance my ability to play and contribute. I really wanted to play a lot. Always did, and it was hard for me, not getting a chance to, as a young player. So I came back to school, and my friends were there. These are my new friends. I don't know the guys back home anymore. We've all changed. I have a mission. So I was back on campus within probably 2 weeks. So yeah.
Yeah, that was my experience too. I came home for just a couple of weeks each summer, and I was just stir crazy. I
Yeah,
like I like seeing my buddies from home and hanging out with my folks and younger brothers, but man, I missed campus. I missed my
yeah,
buddies and
right.
working out. And did you take classes as well in the summer or just workouts?
I did. So going from my sophomore, junior, and on, I took a couple of classes to help myself out, and then you get opportunity to still be a part of the program when you're taking classes. So that helped. It helps you get to stay there. So for sure, I took classes, and I was trying to better myself all the way around the best I could.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, with Nashville being the music city, you got to share some experiences, some of the favorite venues you like to go to,
I
hear
mean,
music play.
oh, sorry. Yeah, there was a spot, man, called Third and Lindsley,
Mhm.
in Nashville. It's a small little. It's not even a bar, man. It's just this place where they have a bar and they have a little small stage.
Mhm.
And I would go down. I went down there to check out some of the jazz musicians down there. 'Cause I played saxophone as my first instrument. I went down there, and these guys are trading for us, man. They're jamming out, and I'm feeling it. So I didn't know that first time that you can come back and you could sit in and you could play. If you had chops, you can come back and play. So a couple times I went down there and sat in with these seasoned musicians, and I got ate up a couple times, but I was able to go and trade force with like Vic Rutan's one of the most famous bass players in all of music, and he and his brother Robbie would play there regularly. So I got a chance to trade force with Vic Rutan. So I have stories like that, and
Wow.
I walked into DreamWorks with a demo, as a college student. My band Mudrunner, we in high school band, we walked in there and handed that thing to DreamWorks and trying to get things going. We didn't know we weren't good enough, but we felt we could have a chance. So
Hey,
yeah,
confidence is half of it.
it it almost paid off, believe me or not. They were like, get a bigger following and we might have something, but
Eh,
it never really caught. Yeah.
Now, are those places, are they still around? Have you been to them in the
I
last?
haven't, man. Nashville's changed so much. I haven't been back to see if Third and Lindsley is there.
Mhm.
And I know DreamWorks, of course, Music Row is still standing there.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
yeah,
downtown. I hate to again sound like the old guy, but when we were in school in the late 80s, Nashville downtown toward the Cumberland River, you didn't really go down there at all.
oh
Printers
wow,
Alley
yeah,
was down there, a few venues, but it was seedy. It was some bad news. But then the storms came through probably around the time that you were in school. There was a big tornado that came through and tore down a lot
yeah,
of downtown, and then they built it up in the last 20 years. And now it's a zoo. It's
yeah.
crazy down
It's
there.
nuts. It's grown up. It's not little big town anymore. That's for sure. It's a
No, it's
city.
big, big town.
Yeah.
When hotel prices rival New York City, there's something
Oh yeah,
something's
definitely.
going on. Well, closer to campus, did you have any places where you guys like to hang out, play pool, go get some pizza, just kill some time? Were there any fun places for you?
I mean, for us, we spent a lot of time, First and Second Avenue as young guys, freshman, sophomore, junior year. The Mumbian Street was kind of a happening spot where we hung out. There were a few places there we hang out, and then of course each other's houses were a thing as we moved off campus. We were a tight knit group, but then everyone finds their groups when they get to be juniors and seniors. So, but yeah, I mean, Mumbian Street, First and Second Avenue, and I spent a lot of time over at Belmont. Clearly, I love music, so I met some Belmont people over there. So that was great. So yeah, man, we had a good time.
Well, it sounds like you were making the most of your college experience, and it was multifaceted. But I want to take you to your senior year of football.
Okay.
You're going into your last year in theory. You're a senior. You're going to graduate at some point coming up. What was in your mindset? What were you looking forward to accomplish that year? Had you thought about beyond college at this point? I suspect you had. And I want you to throw in, where were you with the bikes? What was going on with that?
Well, I wasn't much and wasn't doing, I mean, for me, my senior year was different than everyone else's senior year because we had a new coach, right? We got Bobby Johnson. We got a new coach, and he handled us a little different. But we'll keep the story. So he handled us quite differently.
Pause that for just a second. What you're about to say, compare the two coaches for just a minute, because that's a unique perspective you've got.
It was night and day, man. And if you were a Woody recruit, you weren't a Bobby Johnson player, only because of the type of culture that Woody comes from, a prolific background. Even the recruits look different. I mean, we came in, I was used to big outside linebackers like Matt Stewart and Nate Morrow. And then, 250, 61-pound, bookends to come to, what Bobby Johnson recruited, which was, linebackers were my size, and so I had to worry about pass protection so much. So that was an issue. So it was definitely different. The culture was different. Woody was the kind of guy that would give you an opportunity to take an opportunity. He treated you. If you want to get better, you train. If you want to do this, you train. Coach Johnson's method was a little closer to a high school type of atmosphere. So for guys who were trying to spread their wings and grow and have been on Woody's program for a while, it was really tough to adjust. And I can't say I ever actually adjusted. I have a few friends probably didn't either because we were just different. We're a little more gritty. We almost were like the Pittsburgh Steelers. You know what I mean? So
was Coach Johnson just there your final season?
No, he was there. So junior, senior year with him, and I was
two and two.
And I was super sick going into my junior year. I got really sick on campus and lost. I went from 220, 30 pounds to 187 pounds. I got 2 hiatal hernias and torn lining in my stomach, osteotitis. Ended up getting a medical shirt. So I was there for that, and that was a tough process too. How they received that process. So it was different, man. It was a hard time. Yeah.
But you're really coming off of injury when Coach Johnson is coming in.
Right. Yeah. I just gotten back to my weight, and I just came, I just figured I had to do my medication properly and getting back into football. And so, yeah.
What position were you competing for at that point?
So Coach Woody, as a parting graces, put me back at running back on the charts. He's like, I know you're D-back, but I know you really love playing running back. So he put me on there. So new coaches just assumed that I had been playing running back for a whole 2 years when I hadn't been. But so I was competing running back with them, and then changed positions 2 more times.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let's take it to your final season.
Yeah.
What kind of goals did you have in mind? What were some things that you were looking forward to accomplishing on or off the field?
I mean, for me, I was trying to find the peace with the process that I had gone through. I was trying to take away what I needed to take away from the school and from my relationships. It was tough that year that Coach Johnson showed up. I got all the schools that recruited me started calling me and asking me if I wanted to transfer because they understood how crucial that is to be a sophomore transitioning to a new coaching staff. Kind of your death sentence.
Were you contemplating that?
Oh, for sure. I remember taking a call from OSU at my locker after our meeting when Coach Johnson came in, the first meeting. I remember taking that call and talking to Coach Smith, like, I'll think about it, because they were really recruiting me. So it was, but I looked at my academics and where they were. I looked at the school that I was attending. I looked at the future that it could provide me, the network, and my friends that I've become really close to. I was staring at as I was on the phone, and it just didn't seem worth it.
Did you let your buddies know that you were being recruited?
Yeah, all of us were talking to one another about that very thing.
Because you clearly it wasn't just you getting recruited.
No, I mean, no, it was quite a few of my friends that those other schools started saying, hey, look, we know what's happening, and are you happy, and those things. And so all of us discussed it, yeah. So, but
A lot of
none of
people
all,
don't know. A lot of people outside of playing the sport don't know it's such a dog eat dog world.
oh, it's nothing of what you would think it is,
Yeah.
and you have to, yeah, it's tough. And for me, being, I got chewed up being, the team player quite often. I sacrifice a lot every year just to
But
for the
I
team.
don't want to get off of our
Oh,
discussion
so
with
yeah,
you,
yeah,
but look at when Coach Franklin left Vanderbilt several years later and the recruits that followed him to Penn State. That's just one example. It happens
all the
every,
time.
but to see the culture he built and the athletes he was recruiting, and then so many of them migrate up to Penn State, it happens all the time. It just happens to
Absolutely,
hurt a little more because it's your school.
absolutely.
It happens. But now, please go back to your senior year, and you've got in your mindset not just these 4 or 5 years, but the next 40 years. I got stuff I
Yeah.
need to do. So
Well,
where do you go with that?
so on my final game, I had one more I had one more year of eligibility left,
Mhm.
but Coach Johnson had already told me he wasn't bringing me back.
Mhm.
So I was playing my final 4 or 5 games knowing that. So it was bittersweet because I was seeing it from a whole different perspective. Like, the clock ticks on your career your whole life, and you hear it, but then as you're actually watching the clock tick every game,
Yeah.
you're going, oh wow, here we go. So yeah,
You know,
I,
that
I,
Ian, I think that's pretty common in programs like Vanderbilt, not just with the coaching switch, but guys who may get recruited as freshmen, by the time they're in their fourth year of eligibility, they're seniors academically,
right,
you see the writing on the wall. That it happened to me. I was redshirted freshman year, but I graduated in 4 years. I wasn't going pro. Heck, I didn't even play. But
right.
I knew I had other things in line for the rest of my going forward. So I can see that mindset. Yeah, it sucks. It hurts because, gosh, I've been playing sports since I was a little kid, and now it's
Right.
coming to a conclusion.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was tough because a lot of it came from for a long time I blamed it on the switch, and so but even then I can look and say some of it was part of that. But it's just tough to be in a situation of something you love, a school you love, a town you love, and you kind
Mhm.
of feel like there's an outsider in control of it. That was tough. So that's kind of how it worked
Well,
out
it's
there.
like Everett just commented. It's just like in the business world. Decisions have to get made for the
Yeah,
betterment
for
of
sure.
the business.
Yeah, and yeah.
Well, take us, if you remember, finishing. I don't know if y'all finished with Tennessee or Wake Forest back
Yeah.
then. Who was the last game?
So our last home game was Kentucky, where the goalpost came down and went down Broadway all the way to Second Avenue. So that was cool.
Uh,
That was a great last game to play, to see the school come behind it, and man, those things traveled to like 2 a.m. So that was awesome. And then our last game on the road was Knoxville. It was, ended with Tennessee. So that was it was crazy. It was a weird thing, but it was kind of a change in the guard for me. Like, there were guys who I've been mentoring as just guys, not necessarily ball players, but ball players too, and helping them along, kind of big broing them. And it was nice to be able to, when we were finishing the game, instead of taking, it was me and Nick Lyle and a couple other guys, instead of us taking like our last opportunity to take snaps, we requested those guys who were younger than us get to go play, because we realized we're changing the guards. We're not going to come back here and play.
yeah.
And we've done enough, and these guys are itching to play, and they drug them all the way to Knoxville. And so we pushed some guys out there in our positions to allow them a chance to get some
That's some
time.
real
So
maturity right there, my friend,
yeah,
because other guys they want to wring out every ounce of game action as they could, but that was some real maturity. Now, I will tell you, I always made better grades during the season. During the spring, I was everywhere. My
yeah.
grades stunk in the spring. Did your final season was '03, you graduate the spring of '04.
Right.
How much fun was the spring of '04 leading up to graduation?
It was tough, man. It was tough being there. Games going on, man. It was hard. Like I still was on. I was still in. So it was really tough to to be there for that. Like Star Walk, probably about, I'd say, man, 3 or 4 years ago, I could finally actually go back and watch one, to be honest. So it was tough. Yeah.
It's interesting. For 10 years after I graduated, I didn't go to games.
Yeah,
It
it's
was
hard.
just, it was out of my system. I was done with it.
Yeah, it was hard for me emotionally. Like I'd break down. Like it was, it was all those football ghosts were haunting me all the time. So it was tough.
Now, a lot of guys, regardless of how much you played and how much you accomplished on the field, almost to a man, when I ask this question, they give me the same answer. What are some of your better memories about being a Vanderbilt Commodore and being on that football team? Part
I
of that.
mean, it's the locker room, man. It's the guys. It's their moms and dads. It's the linking up with people who you never would have met otherwise. It's the town. It's not the party that you had at school. It's the conversation you had afterwards, and it's the. I mean, for me, I had big things. I mean, we had Luke falling on the elevator. That was huge. We had a coaching staff change. Just on the end of my career, Kwame Doster. We had so many things happen,
Yeah.
that impacted us and we glued us together. Didn't tear us down. Yeah.
It's for me, it's 2 a.m. trips to White Castle with 5 other guys.
Oh man, you're a brave soul, man. You're a brave man.
I didn't say I ate them. I just said I went.
Okay.
It's going over to Exit Inn, 2 blocks away from campus, and listening to Steve Winwood, who's just sitting on a stool in the corner doing his thing.
Yeah.
It's those types of things. Now, fast forward 20 odd years, or not quite that far for you, it's friendships that I'm sure you still, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, and we're about to get to that. You could pick up like it was yesterday.
Yeah, it's true, man. And those are I told my high school guy I used to train that the guys you were friends with in high school are your friends, they're your buddies. It's a proximity deal. But the friends you make in college are your friends for life. Regardless of how often you talk to them, how often you see them, there's a bond that's made there, especially on the football team, that can't be broken.
You can mention one single word that, whatever that word is, it'll trigger 5 different guys to laughing and just giving somebody a hard time about whatever that word means to the group.
Absolutely, and that's I think we need those relationships, and I think in Vanderbilt especially, with as hard as it is to play there, and go to and learn there, it's important. Those relationships are huge for you to be able to sustain.
One of the things I just put on the site this week was for each decade that I did 5 or 6 different decades, 60s through the current decade. Whatever decade you signed at Vanderbilt, put your name, your year, your hometown.
Yeah, it's awesome.
What I loved seeing, they're all over the country. It's not, Vanderbilt doesn't have the luxury of just recruiting Tennessee, North Alabama, South Kentucky, whatever. There's guys from everywhere. And I just think that's the coolest thing to see that.
No, that's great, because if I would have gone to school in Texas like everyone thinks you should from here, it would have been a bunch of Texas boys from towns I knew and people I may have played against. And I went to Vanderbilt and nobody that I played football with that I ever played against or known anything about until I got there. It was great.
Yeah, you can create yourself anew, whatever it is. But as we get finished, Ian, and I sure appreciate this deep dive and talking with you today, and this has been a lot of fun for me. So I appreciate your time and sharing your story. Tell folks about what it's like to travel the world doing the work and the profession that you have so enjoyed over these years.
It's super cool, man. It's great to do so. It's great to do something that I have a passion for, and it really isn't necessarily the motorcycles, that it is the people that I get to interact with. And I like entertaining. Music's part of it. I like entertaining people, and not for the sake of look at me, I'm doing something cool, but more like I want to see people have a great time. And if I can contribute and make that happen in any way, I like it. I crack jokes because I want you to laugh, not because I want you to think I'm funny. Or I'll sing a song I want you to dance, not because I want you to tell me I'm good at it. So I get to perform and meet people and talk to them and get their experiences as we talk. And I get to do it all over the place. And it's cool.
What's the commonality between lining up in Neyland Stadium for a kickoff return and performing stunts in Sturgis in front of 50,000 people or more? What's the commonality there? What do you feel? What's the rush?
I mean, the rush is, when the gate drops and it's time to go, it's time to perform, and you got to hit your marks every single time. What you did in practice, you have to do now. You still have to train for it. You still have to be prepared for it. You still have to set practice things during the week. and it's still execution happening, and all eyes are on you more than they were in football because Neyland's 128,000 people, but they don't see little number 33 running around. But when it's just me and another bike with people watching, they're all expecting to see me do something, and there's not an eye coming off of you. You don't get a chance to miss a block. You know, you don't have that opportunity. You have to hit it now. So it's execution, it's performance, it's the practice, and then the delivery. So they're similar, really. In my mind, they're the same. It's just something different.
Here's another similarity that may or may not shock some of you. Injuries in football versus injuries in performing. What's the comparison?
The injuries from football I have a lot of soft tissue injuries, right? The ones that the ligaments and things that are weird. Injuries from this sport. So turf and grass give a little bit. Concrete does not. And I'm riding on a 400-pound bike that usually when I end up off of it, it ends up on me. So I have these two hands, like this is as far as they go. I can't turn them over any more than that. I broke my legs in 2015, broke both legs at the same time, and finished the season with them broken. So it's a little more grit, man, than football. You don't get to go get on ice and
now granted, when we put this up on YouTube, there's going to be family members of yours watching this or listening to this. So I'm going to be polite and say, give us one of your oh crap moments when you knew that something had gone awry when performing on bikes.
Oh man, I'll give you one. I mean, there was one in Denver where I have a thing called a stoppie where you come up on the front wheel and you roll it for a distance, and we were in warm up. And we had just gotten there. We had driven there in the RV and unloaded the bikes. And we usually don't practice before we ride. It maintains the theater. And so we get out there and we're practicing, and I go grab a whole handful of front brake to do the trick, and it locks up and slings me up over the front of the bike, coming in at probably about 30, 40 miles an hour. Nothing crazy, but it breaks both wrists, when I hit the ground. And but I knew at that moment that I had ruined the entire day. It was less about my injury, but like I ruined the entire day because now we're up here in Denver and I'm not going to be able to ride because I can barely, take my shoes off or do anything else. So that was one of those moments. I had 2 broken arms driving back from Denver 12 hours to try to get it looked at, and ended up riding 2 weeks later though. But yeah.
2 weeks later?
I came home and then we ended up going, but we had a show in Greenville, South Carolina. So went
I don't even want to know your pain threshold limit.
Yeah, wow. Man, the risks were better than in New York, broke my legs in New York. The first day of shows in New York, broke my legs. We were riding inside. I broke those. I had to ride the rest of the weekend from Friday to Sunday.
You must be full of titanium and hardware.
Not yet, but I'm going to be headed that way at some point.
Well, when the world opens up again, do you have one of those cards when you go through the airport that shows up?
I really need it. Like, look, this is holding me. I'm okay. I'm not a terrorist. I just,
Yeah, and they're looking at you like, you're only how old? You're not old.
Yeah.
Dude.
Not even 40 yet, man, but I feel 70. It's okay.
Well, Ian, it has been absolutely my pleasure to share these stories and talk with you tonight, my friend.
No, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's nice for me, like having felt, on the peripheral of the program, to get a chance to sit down and talk with the people. So it's been nice to pull back in. Yeah.
When we hang up in a few minutes, I want you to get into the Facebook group. You got all kind of love coming at you tonight in the comments, all kind of good.
That feels great. That feels great, man. Yeah.
Well, very good. Well, guys, again, another outstanding conversation with a Commodore from years past. This is so much fun. We're going to keep doing these on Thursday nights. And Mike Healy, if you're still watching, bud, I'm coming for you in December. One of my former teammates, one donut over in Charleston, South Carolina. All right, guys, y'all have a good night. Anchor down. Oh, before I forget, go into the group and find the Black and Gold Club. Sign up. It's free. They just need your information because they're starting to get some good things going. They want to connect the current team players and student athletes with guys in the past to create internships, mentorships, potentially job opportunities. This is something that Vanderbilt has needed for decades. Other programs have wonderful programs like this, and we really should be doing this to help out our young folks coming through the programs. So that's it for me. Anchor down. Catch y'all another time. Take care.
All right, take care. See